Have you ever been judged for just one photo, while the whole story behind it was completely different? Today, the internet is buzzing because of one seemingly simple image. Wang Yibo, behind the wheel, one hand on the steering wheel, the other hand calmly playing with a pair of walnuts. Some people say, this is dangerous, irresponsible, even reckless. Others insist, it's being taken out of context, and the truth is very different. So what really happened that day? And why did two tiny walnuts manage to shake the entire internet? Welcome to StarWatch Now, where we slow down, look deeper, and bring you stories about your favorite stars with both heart and reason. Have you ever been judged for just one photo, while the whole story behind it was completely different? Today, the internet is buzzing because of one seemingly simple image. Wang Yibo, behind the wheel, one hand on the steering wheel, the other hand calmly playing with a pair of walnuts. Some people say, this is dangerous, irresponsible, even reckless. Others insist, it's being taken out of context, and the truth is very different. So what really happened that day? And why did two tiny walnuts manage to shake the entire internet? Welcome to StarWatch Now, where we slow down, look deeper, and bring you stories about your favorite stars with both heart and reason. It all began with a single frozen frame, the kind of image that travels faster than any explanation ever could. In that still shot, Wang Yibo sits in the driver's seat, the road stretching out ahead, one hand resting on the steering wheel, while the other turns a pair of worn walnuts with quiet concentration. His expression is calm, almost meditative, and that is precisely what unsettled people. He does not look like a man performing for the camera, but someone entirely absorbed in his own rhythm. Stripped of context, the photo became a blank screen for projection. Some saw carelessness and danger, a celebrity treating the road as a toy. Others saw a familiar human habit, a tiny gesture of comfort before facing something demanding. The picture began to circulate with dramatic captions, each one pushing the narrative a little further away from reality. In a matter of hours, the question was no longer what was happening in that moment, but what kind of person is he? A single image, pulled from a much longer journey, had quietly transformed from documentation into judgment. The moment that short clip escaped into the online world, it stopped being just a scene from a documentary and became something far more charged. On the surface, it looked simple. A famous young star behind the wheel, one hand occupied with a pair of walnuts, the footage looping again and again on countless screens. But every replay quietly collided with something much heavier that people carry inside themselves. Memories of traffic jams, the sound of sudden brakes, news of accidents that began with, "It only took a second of distraction." In modern life, the car is not merely a practical object. It is a space where people answer messages, sip coffee, change songs, and glance at notifications, all while moving through streets shared with strangers. Each person who watched that clip brought their own history to it. Someone who had lost a friend in a crash might feel a tightness in the chest at the thought of any distraction behind the wheel. A parent teaching a teenager to drive might worry, just for a moment, that their child could copy what they see a celebrity doing. The gap between entertainment and reality suddenly felt very narrow. That is why the discussion so quickly moved beyond Wang Yibo himself. People were not only asking, is he being irresponsible? But also, what does this say about how we all behave when we think no one is watching? The clip became a mirror, reflecting back a question that belongs to everyone who has ever driven while tired, while stressed, while tempted to check one more message. In that sense, it was never just about a pair of walnuts. It was about the uncomfortable truth that in a world full of constant distraction, the smallest habit can carry consequences far beyond what we intend. Beyond the looping clip and the angry headlines, there is a quieter version of events that most people never paused long enough to see. The drive in question did not take place on a crowded city street at rush hour, but on a long, empty road cutting through what the crew called a no-man's land in the United States. There were no honking cars, no impatient motorbikes weaving through traffic, no pedestrians stepping off the pavement without warning. It was part of a filming schedule for an outdoor documentary, a journey towards a rock face where Wang Yibo would later climb with his own hands, without a stunt double, under the watchful eye of a professional team. In that context, the walnuts in his palm were not a gimmick but a tool, a simple, old-fashioned way of waking up the nerves in his fingers, loosening the fascia, preparing the grip that would later hold onto cold stone. For many climbers and athletes, such rituals are familiar, almost invisible. What made this one so visible was the camera, and the fact that the person holding the steering wheel was not just any driver, but someone whose every small movement is magnified by fame. Away from the noise of the internet, there is also the fact that Wang Yibo is a trained racer, someone who has spent hours learning to read roads, feel traction, and manage risk at speeds far higher than those shown in the documentary. None of this excuses carelessness, but it does shift the meaning of that moment. Instead of a careless game, it begins to look more like an athlete caught in transition, moving between the calm of the car and the challenge of the cliff. It is a reminder that a single frame can never hold the full weight of a story, especially when that story is still in motion. There is a moment in almost every modern scandal when the facts themselves become less important than the way they are arranged, and this story is no exception. Once that brief segment of Wang Yibo at the wheel was cut away from the wider documentary, it stopped belonging to its original timeline. It was no longer a few seconds in the middle of a long, empty drive towards a climbing site. It became a free-floating image, ready to be framed by whoever shared it next. A sentence added here, a suggestive caption there, a slow zoom on the walnuts in his hand, and suddenly the clip was no longer a detail but the whole story. In that transformation lies something quietly dangerous. We live in a world where outrage spreads faster than context, where a cleverly edited video can travel the globe before anyone has the chance to ask, what came before this? What came after? For a public figure, this means that every movement, every absent-minded gesture, can be turned into evidence of something they never intended to express. Today it is walnuts. Tomorrow it could be a glance, an unfinished sentence, a tired expression mistaken for arrogance. When out of context becomes a habit, it hardens into a weapon, a way to turn nuance into accusation and human complexity into a simple, clickable narrative. The saddest part is that, in the rush to react, we forget that there is a person at the center of the frame, someone who may have been thinking about the climb ahead, not the headlines to come. By the time the full story emerges, the sharpest words have already been spoken, and the clip has done its work. What remains is a quieter question for all of us. How often do we mistake a fragment for the truth, and how many people pay the price for our impatience? In the end, this story turns into something larger than a debate about walnuts and steering wheels. It becomes a quiet examination of responsibility on both sides of the screen. For anyone who has ever driven a car, there is a simple truth that cannot be softened. The moment you hold the wheel, you also hold the safety of everyone around you. It does not matter whether you are world-famous or completely unknown, whether the road is crowded or perfectly still. The vehicle does not know your name. It only responds to your choices. From that perspective, the safest rule will always be focus first, habits later. No documentary, no recording, no desire to stay in motion while warming up for the next challenge can outweigh the duty to hold that space of concentration. If not for yourself, then for the people who might one day cross your path. Yet responsibility does not stop with the person in the video. It also rests with those of us who watch, share, and judge. In a culture that rewards speed over depth, it is tempting to react to whatever lands on our feed and call that a considered opinion. But when we turn a single captured moment into a public verdict, we participate in a quieter kind of carelessness, not with a car, but with a human being's name and work. To ask for more context, to wait before condemning, is its own form of discipline. It means accepting that we are not just spectators, but part of the atmosphere in which public figures live and breathe. The lesson, then, is not that one side must be perfect while the other is free to be ruthless. It is that both sides are learning how to live in a world where everything can be replayed, but not everything should be reduced to a single, unforgiving frame. What makes this incident particularly meaningful is that it does not have to end where most online dramas do, in exhaustion and bitterness. Fans, perhaps more than anyone else, hold a quiet power to decide what a story becomes after the noise dies down. They can choose whether a moment of controversy is remembered only as another round of who was right and who was wrong, or whether it becomes the starting point for something gentler and more constructive. Imagine a fandom that responds not simply by defending its idol, but by examining its own habits on the road. People sharing how they now put their phone out of reach before driving, how they speak up when friends check messages at traffic lights, how they remind younger siblings that no trend is worth their safety. Instead of trading insults with strangers online, they might create artwork, essays, or short videos that balance admiration with awareness, pairing images of their favorite star with reminders about focus, patience, and care. Fan communities could organize small campaigns in his name, not to clear his reputation alone, but to honor the deeper message that every life on the road matters. In doing so, they would be quietly rewriting the narrative from a star under attack to a moment that woke us up a little. This does not require grand gestures or public statements. It begins with a change in tone, a refusal to fuel cruelty, a willingness to turn frustration into empathy. When fans choose to respond in this way, they are not only standing by someone they admire, they are also proving that a community built around entertainment can still produce something deeply human, a shared decision to act with more care, both online and off. If you enjoyed looking at this story from different angles, and you want more calm, thoughtful, and emotionally grounded analyses of Chinese celebrities, dramas, and entertainment news, then please subscribe to StarWatch now. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next deep dive. And leave a comment below. Do you think Wang Yibo was treated fairly in this situation? What would you have done in his place? Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. Stay safe on the road, stay kind online, and I'll see you in the next video on StarWatch now. Glowing Star.